Hello and welcome to the Car Motivators Who's Happening in Automotive podcast, whereby we spotlight those who represent the best practices of our beloved automotive industry. My guest host is none other than Mr. Fantastic, Mr. Reed Richards, who
Good
in
afternoon.
his alias doubles as a coach for Car Motivators. Our guest today has one of the best names in the business, quite frankly, in any business. Essentially, he's a show ya guy. He'll show your dealership personnel how to utilize the tools at hand to optimize performance and get the most out of the investments made regarding your CRM, digital retailing tool, and overall internet sales performance. Durran Cage, thanks for jumping on.
Thank you so much for having me on. Great introduction, and thank you for the shout out on the name. I appreciate that. But as I said earlier, I love your name as well. Both of you guys have pretty awesome names. But thank you for allowing me to be on here. I'm excited.
Pleasure. Well, give us your background and how did you find yourself in retail automotive?
Yeah, so we'll have to go back. It's funny. I was just talking to my wife about this. Like, is it crazy that next month it's about to be 20 years? 20 years in the automotive industry. So it started back in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My best friend, Casey Zangier, his dad owned a dealership. And so once I got exposed to that life at like 15 years old and saw what was possible and saw what his dad was able to accomplish, I was like, I'm coming to work for your dad when we graduate. And surely we did. It was May 2002, Memorial Day weekend. Sold my first car was a Dodge Dakota. I'll never forget it. I know most people are like, what in the world is a Dakota?
I know.
So did that, and then just fast forward. So selling cars there. Then I'm in college at University of New Mexico. I graduate there. And then, those factory reps, I always stayed close with the factory reps at the time when I was young. And the factory rep reached out and he's like, are you selling cars anymore? I said, well, I'm doing an internship. He's like, I can get you a job to work for Chrysler at the time. And that was in 2007. And so I was like, I don't know. He's like, you get a car? I was like, I'm in, because I didn't have anything. So then they sent me out to Memphis, Tennessee in 2007. So that's how, I moved corporate from 2007 to 2008, then go back into retail in 2008 because I saw the opportunity with the digital side. So if you guys remember in 2008, that's when Google, all that stuff was so important, but a lot of dealers were still kind of, I don't know. So I was teaching that stuff then. And then one of the dealers said, put your money where your mouth is. And so that was in Jackson, Tennessee. So I ended up being there for 8 years. Half of it as a internet director and the other half as a general sales manager. So from there, did consulting on the corporate side. And then in 2018, started my own consulting business, which really is the focus of what you just said around the internet sales experience, CRM efficiency, and then dealership branding. Because I know it says marketing, but really I focus on dealerships creating a brand to draw in customers into their business.
Sure.
And actually, that's what the next question is when you walk into a dealership, what does your analysis consist of? Is it system analysis, software, or like broader cultural orientated assessment?
Really almost all three of those things that you just said, because definitely, so we call it a cage system. It's really just a system that you put into place, right? But then that culture is just as important, because I look for energy. So the moment I walk into a place, I'm feeling the energy. I want to see what it feels like. Because if that culture is off and the energy is there, it's not there, then I don't even focus on the system part, because the system's going to break if the people and the culture and the energy is not there. Because you guys know, you've seen it too. You walk into a place and there's just not good vibes. That's important. And then the software side, that's where the CRM comes in. So I fix that CRM up, because most dealerships, like I just had a call with a dealership last week or a few days ago. The templates and everything that was in their CRM was the same. It was just the original templates that came with e-leads. The same, because I see all the different CRMs. I said, you guys have never put in your own email templates with branding? He said, well, I got a few here, but that's it. I was like, whoa. And so there's a lot of dealerships like that. We get this tool and then we kind of just work it from there. We really don't customize it. And that's when the software side, that's what we do.
Yeah, I've had that feeling, by the way, walking into usually it's customer service departments at Home Depot or back in the day at Best Buy. You walk in and there's like no energy. I mean, it's like it's an energy suck.
Yep.
It's same in dealerships. It's palpable. It's palpable. Well, let's talk about CRMs since you brought that up. Why do you suspect CRMs aren't being used to the fullest extent? Is it the complexity of them? Is it the human buy-in element or lack thereof, lack of training, or because most car salesmen were communications majors in college and might not have the bandwidth?
So I would say number one, and this is where a lot of things come down to, it's the leadership.
Yeah.
You know, because, and I'm going through this with my company now, just being fully transparent with you guys. You know, I was talking to my wife about this. Like, we have to stop working with dealerships from the bottom up and start working from the top down. Because, you know, we spend a lot of time teaching internet people, sales people, all these tools and how to use this CRM. But the people that need to embrace it and put it in the most is the leadership at the store. So once they really understand how powerful that tool is and how to hold their team accountable and set that system up to where they're using it, the sales team's using it, even service can be using it. Once that gets implemented at the top, then that's when that CRM takes off. But if what I see a lot of times is you'll have leaders and sales managers at the dealership, they kind of like let the salespeople do the follow-up stuff in the CRM, and then they just stay put. And they're like, I don't really do that stuff. But what's funny about this, because I know you both have probably been in the business for a while, if you go back, like I think 20 years from now, the sales managers were actually the biggest controllers of the follow-up, because you guys remember those old desk logs, the old paper log, and you had to put the customer's name in there, salesperson name, and you had to put in, they did a demo write-up. I remember the managers used to have that, and they had to like, hey, Durran, who's that customer you were just with? Here's all the information. But then when the CRMs came in, it's kind of like we flipped it, you know, and we made it to where we want the salespeople doing more, BDC doing more, but the manager is the biggest glue to that CRM.
You know, Durran, it's kind of funny you say that because your stories are very familiar to mine. I swear to you, not the last podcast we had, I was talking to the guy. I just started working with a dealership in California. They have Dealer Socket, and they haven't touched it since they started in 2014. Same exact stories. You know, it's absolutely crazy. You know, as far as CRM usage, it just seems like you would think that if you were, you know, self type, you know, motivated, kind of like, you know, a salesperson, you know, since that's kind of like what we're supposed to do is prospect, you would want to use it.
Absolutely. And listen to this. There's a stat that I heard this morning and I guess you can fact check it. This came from cars.com. So it was on a Clubhouse call, and they did a huge survey, and it said that it says dealership loyalty is 35% on the consumer side. So that kind of, to me, that's almost the exact equation of the CRM, because if you're doing what you're supposed to do in that CRM and it's set up the right way, then your retention you'll be on that 70% side where you're getting a much more retention. But like to your example, what you just said, that would explain it, because if you're not using that tool and it's not set up to keep that cycle going with sales and service, then that would explain why the customer loyalty for dealerships is so small, because the lack of communication. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, you're 100% right. So what do you think the key elements of a CRM that they're missing out? What are they missing out on? What features are being underserved? Sorry.
So what I teach is to make sure we're prioritizing our flow and how we work the CRM. So what I teach is I advise, make sure you're using the CRM to work for you. You don't work for the CRM. And so what I mean by that is you'll see a lot of sales teams where they're so focused on completing tasks, but they're not focused on engaging with the right people. You know what I mean? So you're just kind of just going in and you'll see them dial. That's all they're focused on, but they're not prioritizing. So what I teach is, you know, to make sure you start your day with your new opportunities. First, you need to have your plan, but start with your new opportunities. Then your unanswered communication. So you got unresponded emails and texts. This sounds simple, but I could pull up a lot of CRMs right now, and there's some that still have 90 people with unanswered communications because they're not dialing in to engage with the right people. But then after you're taking care of those unanswered replies, you know, you're making sure your appointments are good for the day. You know, you're sending videos to those customers. Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you. This could be managers. And then the next step should be spending time with your most engaged shoppers. You know, those people from the last week or two that have been talking with you, that's who you want to get with, and then do the rest of that follow-up. But what happens, Reed, is that most people will come in and they'll just start pounding tasks. And most CRMs, the first task they ask you to do will be like happy birthday calls. You know, there'll be sold follow-up calls.
Yeah,
Right.
That is important. You know,
Yeah.
I love both of you. Happy birthday. But I'm not going to call you first or send you a video first until I take care of my engaged shoppers who are actually needing help and they want to get a vehicle.
That is true. Now let's get into a little bit of advertising talk. I'm going to lead this off with a story just because it's a fun anecdote. I know of, this is legit, I want to say it was in Illinois, probably even the Chicago area, an Audi dealer that was number 8 in their market. They became number 1 when they dropped their advertising. Now, I'm not suggesting you do it, but let's talk advertising. It's seen a major evolution in the industry. There's no question about it. Most of it's gone online, yet that evolution has made it even tougher to create a strong attribution connected to the advertising spend. So what's your philosophy on dealership advertising, and what is your process in advising and working with dealers to optimize that spend? I know you've got something to contribute to that. That's a huge aspect of what you do.
Question. So let's break that down. First, the dealership advertising strategy. The first thing that we need to look at with an organization is like, what's so unique about your store? You know, like why should people even do business with you? You know, I have to ask myself the same question. Dealer reaches out, why should we do Cage Automotive? What's up with you? Then once you get clear on what that is, you know, you can call it a why buy, a value proposition, whatever, then you start highlighting that and start promoting that, you know, and you focus on that brand that you have. Because really the advertising strategy, your best form of advertising is your own employees. You know, you using them is your true advertising, how they get out to the community, you know, what they're doing away from work, what they're doing while they're at work, what they're doing on social media. You know, like you should just be paying your people to be part of your advertising strategy. Think about it. They're out there, they're promoting, they're pushing, doing all these different things. And then you can connect that to, do we want to do TV? Do we want to do digital? But you have to have a strategy, because what I challenge dealerships to do who are advertising out there is look at some of the best in the business, not just in our industry, look outside. So if you look at Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, Apple, what are they marketing? Then you need to align with that. And if you look around, most marketing that's happening is around what? Convenience, speed, quick, transparency. And so the advertising model needs to align with things like that. Then when it comes down to your second part of the question, how do we analyze that spend? You know, how do we justify that? Like how much money we're spending? Well, you can use things like Google Analytics, of course, to get a good idea. And then you do have your CRM that you can use to look at it by source. But I mean, I'm an old school person. So when I ask for that stuff, I just say, hey, send me all the invoices, look at that, because that's one thing that a lot of dealerships don't do right there, is to like, when's the last time you looked at all your spend and dialed it in to see where your money's going? So we look at all that, and then you can marry that back to what we just talked about with the CRM to see which channels are the most profitable. And what I do before looking at the different sources that we advertise with, don't pay so much attention to just how many cars you sold. But what I like to do is see like how many of those people got engaged with us. So if you had 100 opportunities come from one source, what was the engagement like there? And then if you had 100 opportunities come from another source, what was the engagement like? Meaning two-way conversation, how receptive were those customers? And then how many appointments were set, and then how many walk-ins and stuff like that. So I hope that kind of answered the second part of your question in terms of how to look at spend, but I always look at the overall advertising spend last, and then focus on that culture, that energy, our branding strategy first. And then you can save a lot of money by using social media and your CRM. I mean, think about it. Dealerships spend a lot of time trying to figure out how they're going to advertise their message on TV and these other channels. But what I challenge them is make sure you're using your own channel, which is your CRM, because you own that data, right? That's their data. That's their baby. So when you said that Audi store, I think you said it doesn't really spend much. Yeah. My guess is they've really dialed in on their own data to where they don't need to spend so much on trying to bring in a bunch of people. They can invest their time and their dollars on their own sources and their own data that they have.
Do you think that most dealers could probably remove half of their advertising budgets and probably still do just as good?
Are you trying to get me hurt?
I'm trying to optimize advertising spend, because I think you would go in and see where they're wasting a lot of money and where you could go in and highly benefit them.
Yeah, but I don't want any vendors taking shots at me. He's like, do you tell? So what I do if any dealer I talk to now, so say if I had a new client that we're going to start next week, before I look at how much they're spending on advertising and which vendors they should just cut, again, I have to go back to their people, their systems, their processes. And then we get to that part. And then we can see, like, because what I normally find, and I'm sure dealers, if they're listening to this, a lot of times where there's overlap, that's what I'll find. So you sometimes will see that there's 3 different companies that are getting paid for your Facebook advertising. Yeah. You know, you got your website company. So what I see normally, here we go, we're going to watch ourselves. But normally you'll see that the website companies get into that advertising spend conversation. And then there'll be another digital agency that's getting some of the ad dollars as well. And then, of course, you have your third-party vendors. And so you have to watch between those 3, because there will be some, you know, you're paying for the reviews, you know, reputation management, where you're paying 4 different companies to help you with your reputation. So that's what I advise dealers first, is like, let's look and make sure that there's no overlap in where we're investing our money.
That's a good answer.
You know, that's crazy, Durran.
That's a good answer.
I didn't even think about it until you just said it. But I thought, you know, we lose 70% of our business after 30,000 miles. Yeah, our retention's horrible, you know, overall. And then I didn't even think about it. They don't even know how much money they're spending. They don't even have, it's not even, you know, that's just absolutely crazy. So let's talk about internet leads. Where are most dealerships dropping the ball and leaving chips on the table?
Be careful now. Well, so I'll be really transparent about this. So again, more statistics. So this morning, it was Jason Rice. If you guys are familiar with him, he's the owner or founder of Lot Pop. He dropped some data on us that 80% of opportunities, like 80% of leads, are on vehicles that are not available, right? So I asked one of my teams that there's a dealership in Arkansas, it's a Toyota store. And so I was like, man, listen to this number. The internet people were like, I bet you it's more than that. They're like, every call we get is typically on a new vehicle that's already been reserved, or a used vehicle that they're selling so fast that it's just, you know, customers are thinking it's a sales tactic. Hey, you might want to do something quick, when it's not. This is real. So what's happening more now in our industry than ever is that people have lost that art to just connect and understand why they picked that car in the first place. Because what you'll see a lot of times, and you both can mystery shop right after we get off this, if you inquire about a vehicle that is not available, and I'll ask you guys, what do you think is the common response that you're going to get?
It's sold.
That's it. And a lot of people are doing it just with a single email. Some are doing with the text. They're like too scared to even make a phone call to let the person know some bad news. So I did a community call with my students, and I told them, change the narrative and call it great news. This is great news, Reed. You know, like, hey, Reed, the vehicle that you inquired about. And matter of fact, it shouldn't even start off with that vehicle's not available. The very first thing that I need to do when I'm talking with Reed or Kelly is to connect with them and find out what attracted them to that car in the first place. Doesn't it sound familiar? It's kind of like selling cars on the lot again before the internet. What did you do? You connected with the people first, and then you helped them find a car. That fact find or needs analysis or whatever we want to call it. But we miss that on the internet leads, because we think that people are just so focused on that car, when really they should be asking the customer, like, hey, you inquired about a Toyota Tundra, Reed. Is it just the Tundra that you're looking for? Like, what is it about the Tundra that caught your attention, Reed? And you might say, I like the Tundra, but I think they're a little high. I'm really looking for something like and they freaking come in and buy like a Mustang or something. That's what a lot of people are missing, because they're so focused on selling something and they're not focused on connecting with people. But that, to me, would be the number one issue that I see with internet leads in a lot of departments. And that's also with phones too. Listen to some phone calls. It's the same thing. An inbound phone call comes in, same thing. Do you have? No, I'm sorry, we don't, but you can put a reserve on one. And so connecting with people is the number one opportunity that I see among internet departments, and then also empowering the leaders in that internet department to be able to help with the transactions. So you notice, like, you'll see a lot of BDC managers, as they call them, where they're not even able to look at credit. They can't pull credit. They can't do a trade appraisal. They can't desk a deal. I'm like, what world do we live in when your website has digital retailing all over it? It has their payments on there. It has the interest rate on there. It's got a trade value on there. But then we tell the internet departments, just get them in, don't give them any information. So you see, there's all this different, the communication's not even consistent because they're seeing one thing online and they're getting a different experience when they connect with the customer offline.
So there's a little bit of training and a little bit of coaching in what you do as well.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. How do you approach that? I mean, I guess certain dealership, how open are dealerships to training and coaching? And then how long does that process take? Do you stay with these people for 90 days, 120 days, a couple weeks? What does that time frame look like?
And it depends. It depends on where the dealership's trying to go. I mean, we've got stores that we've been with for almost 4 years now. That's like when we started, and they still are with us the whole time because it's evolving. Like once we tackle one thing, there's always areas for growth. Like when before COVID happened, there's clients that I had before COVID that are still with me now. But before COVID happened, what we just talked about with digital retailing and stuff and all this other, I was pushing that way before COVID even happened. So like, pushing digital retailing to customers is something I believe in, like giving that option. So there's a message that goes out like, hey, Kelly, hey, I hadn't been able to get in touch with you in the last day or two. Here's a way where you can start the process on your own if that's convenient for you. I was teaching that back in 2018. So it really helps. So clients see value in that. But back to your specific training question, the true training happens when the trainer leaves. That's what I always teach. So what I mean by that is when I show up, yes, I'm going to make people feel good. They're going to be jacked up. They're going to want to record videos and do things like that. But the real training is, again, back to the leaders, they have to keep that going every single day. And just take 15, 20 minutes, have fun with it. Sometimes when I was running a store, I didn't do all the training. I actually would let my sales managers do it. I would let my top performing salespeople do it. I would let my BDC internet people come in and talk about how they get people in. I would have an office manager. There was a lady named Marquita. She would come in there. She put on the best freaking sales meeting than everybody. So that's what I teach in terms of training is everybody should be included in that, because when you have other people teaching, and they become a trainer, we all know this, that you become better at selling when you start teaching other people how to sell, because you're like, oh, I get why we're teaching this. And they say that now. So that's my answer to you on training. It's something that's consistent going. But yeah, I do in-store training. And then what I do with a lot of my clients is we have like weekly accountability calls and stuff like that, just to make sure a lot of the stuff that we put in place is actually getting done.
That's awesome.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So it's crystal ball time. Where do you see the dealership model 10 years from now?
Okay. So Reed's trying to get me hurt. All right. So I need to practice my political responses because, the politicians do it best. You're like, you know what, Reed, that's a great question. Let me think about that, but no.
Well, I'll circle back to you.
Yeah, I'll circle back to that. No, 10 years from now.
When we have like subscription models, will manufacturers be selling direct or
I definitely on the new car side, I definitely feel the manufacturers, we all know this is no secret. The manufacturers are going to be way more involved in the consumer process. So yes, do I see a place where it's going to be dealers are more as fulfillment for online orders that are direct from the manufacturer? Absolutely. I think that's possible.
Why do you think that is?
Because, well, if you just watch TV sometimes, like just look at an ad. I think it was, I don't even want to say the OEM because I don't, but there's an ad that ran that was an OEM ad and it's on TV and it says, reserve yours now, go to www.blank.com. Right. So they're pushing that. And the other thing is I was at a dealership. I'm not going to say the manufacturer. A customer came in and was like, I already put in the order for such and such. And I was just wondering what the status was. The dealership didn't even know anything about it. There was no communication to them about this customer even putting that order in. It was all from the consumer to the manufacturer. So that's where, and this isn't all OEMs, so I don't want to blanket it, but because there are some OEMs that are really taking a team approach with the dealers, they're locking arm in arm. And then there's some other manufacturers that I feel like they're stepping on dealers' toes. But my advice to dealers, even right now, if you don't have a used car store that you can separate and brand, you need to do that now. That's what I would say, because the used car business is always going to be huge. You know, like we always talk about the franchise, if we look at new car numbers, but we don't talk about the used car numbers enough. And so if you have OEM, Jones family company, whatever it's called, they should be creating Jones Used Car Superstar Center, something like that.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
if you look at some of the top, right, look at CarMax, I don't mind saying their name, or Carvana, whatever, even if Carvana's down, look at what they have. They can do whatever they want. Why? Because they're not ran by an OEM. What were you going to say, Reed?
Well, honestly, I'm a big believer in, go after the buy, not the sell.
Yeah.
But if you did notice, though, I think Carvana and Vroom and companies like that will suffer, because I still believe that buying in a car is an emotional purchase.
Absolutely.
You have to drive it to make sure you like it, before you buy it. And I think these people are having that discontent after, and that's where they're seeing less, and CarMax is seeing more.
But that, and people still love to connect with people. Like, look what we're doing now. We still love to connect with each other. So as much as it sounded great to make a $30, $40, $50, $60,000 purchase online and not talk to a human being, what we're seeing now is that people, what's that?
No fun.
Yeah. What we're seeing now is people are like, no, because it's that after the sale too, right? That's so important. You just spent 50 grand. You want to feel appreciated after the sale. You want somebody following up with you. You want to know that your service needs are
I'll pick you up. I'll pick your car up for service.
Boom. You see what I mean? So that's what's important in terms of why some of these companies might struggle with that. Because I think consumers just really need to have the options anyways. Yeah. Like sometimes I feel like companies and vendors, we push our agenda on the consumers and say, everybody's going to do digital retailing. When the answer really lies, what does the consumer want to do?
Right.
It should be those different options. Just like if we went to a grocery store, right? You can now do what? You can have that sucker dropped off to your house. You can go in, you can do your scan yourself. You can wait in line and deal with real people, because some people still want a real person to check them out. They got it down pat, and dealers need to implement the same strategy.
Yeah, it seems as though the digital retailing solution, it's important for sure, but there might have been some assumptions made early on that it was going to be adopted by virtually every consumer out there. And right now the numbers are in the low single digits, which they always were in some places. And in some places it's a lot higher up. We had Steve Zabawa on, who owns Rimrock Auto Group, and he was in the low double figures for quite some time up there in Big Sky Country. And there'll definitely be a future for it. Okay, here's a tough question. I love this one. It's a little bit loaded, and I apologize for not having given it to you in advance, because you have to sell yourself now. What is the Durran Cage value proposition? What does a dealership get when they get you? We love you, by the way.
Most importantly, me. You're getting 20 years of somebody that's been on the retail, that's been on the manufacturer side, that's been on the corporate side, and now has their own business and has worked with hundreds of dealerships. When you pile all that in, it doesn't take me long. Literally, it's kind of like they tell that story of the electrician you hire. They hire that electrician to come fix something big, and he comes in there, they pay him some money, and then he's there for 5 minutes, and he's like, wait, I thought that would. That's kind of the level that we're at, because we've seen so much, and you both have as well. But the biggest value, the biggest value proposition for us is really that you get to connect with me, you get to connect with my wife, and you get to connect with my team. And with us coming into your organization, it's going to flip its heads upside down, because it's not that we care so much about, if you notice, if you follow me on social media, I'm not out there selling that I'm the best thing in the world. That's not what I do. But what I enjoy to do more than anything is kind of like what we're doing on here, is just connecting with people, because that's the only way that you can get people to really change. all of us on here, we can't get anybody to change anything, but by connecting with people, you can influence them to make a change behavior. And that's the art that we have, and that's what we believe in.
I think you hit it. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say influence, inspire, and motivate, and then you get change.
I think you hit it on the nail on the head, though, when it comes to, communication. We want to communicate. And that's why digital retailing has been so unsuccessful, is because it's really hard for us to even communicate when they're there.
Yes. No,
the inventory fluctuation is also part of that problem too. It's like you see something you want, you do the research, and by the time you push the button, it's gone.
Yeah. And again, it's like when you talk about communication, Reed, what's important about that, and it's communication on both sides. It's communication with your employees is more important, or just as important as communication with your customers. But if we know right now, what's one of the top platforms on social media or top apps in the world? Normally it's between like TikTok, YouTube, stuff like that. It kind of circles around our IG. Well, what's wrong with communicating with your customers in a TikTok style video if that matches your culture? An email blasting that out in your CRM and just keeping them up to date on what's going on with the inventory crisis at your store. Like, people would love that because you're being transparent. Imagine a general manager saying, "Hey, to Durran over at ABC Motors, and I just wanted to give you guys, I want to talk to you about what's going on. I know you've heard a lot of dealerships are raising their prices. Well, the customers that have been doing business with us, we're not going to raise prices on. We actually have a package made just for you guys." And, just having that transparent talk would be huge, but not enough dealerships do it because we communicate more through social media channels because we're trying to get more. But I think that, like you said, Reed, that communicate to your employees in a fun TikTok style way with video, and then connect with your customers that way that matches your brand. So if you're like Alexis, don't get me in trouble and start doing TikTok with some rap music in the back. But unless if it matches your area, then do your thing. But communication, you're right, is key.
That's all the time we have for this edition. We like to keep it short and sweet. I think that one actually ran a little bit longer, but I got to tell you, it's one of the best ones we've had. And we're going to have you on. We're going to be doing panel chats, and I'd love to have you on some of those as well.
Yeah, super sharp.
Reed, Mr. Fantastic, this is Kelly Kleinman. Bye for now.